God made everything from absolutely nothing. Just total darkness everywhere, like when you close your eyes super tight, but even darker. There wasn't any pizza, no puppies, no mountains, no nothing. Just God floating there thinking, you know what? I'm gonna make something awesome. So God spoke into all this nothing and said, let there be light. And boom, light appeared just like that. Can you imagine being able to create light just by talking? Pretty wild stuff. And get this, God looked at the light and was like, yeah, that's really good. He separated the light from the dark, making day and night for the very first time ever. Before this, time didn't even exist. No bedtime, no lunchtime, no playtime. This was literally day number one of everything. God basically invented time itself. He made it so we could have morning and evening, just like we do now when we wake up and go to sleep. That's how everything started. One voice, one command, and suddenly there was light everywhere. And that was just day one. God was just getting warmed up for all the other cool stuff he was about to make. Imagine floating in the middle of endless water with no sky above or ground below. That's exactly how Earth looked on day 2 of creation. God knew this infinite ocean needed some organization. So with his powerful voice, he split the waters. Picture a giant invisible wall pushing some water up and keeping other water down. The space between became what we call the sky or atmosphere. Think of it like a massive blue dome protecting our planet. The waters above became the clouds where rain comes from, while the waters below stayed as our oceans. This is why, when we look up on a clear day, we see beautiful blue skies stretching as far as our eyes can see. And when it rains, it's like the waters above are visiting the waters below, just like they were once connected. Next time you're outside, take a moment to look up. That big blue sky above you was carefully designed on day 2, creating the perfect space between waters for some pretty amazing how God turned endless water into the world we know today. Everything you see outside started as a giant pool of water. God knew the earth needed more than just water, so on day 3, he did something incredible. He separated the waters below from the dry ground, creating land where there was none before. Imagine being there when mountains suddenly pushed up from under the ocean, when beaches appeared out of nowhere, and when valleys formed right before your eyes. But God wasn't finished yet. He looked at the bare ground and decided it needed some color. With just a word, he made plants pop up everywhere. Tall trees grew in seconds, flowers bloomed instantly, and grass covered the ground like a soft green carpet. Every plant was given special seeds to make more plants just like them. Think about it. Every apple tree, every daisy, and every blade of grass you see today came from that amazing third day. God designed each plant perfectly, knowing exactly what we would need for food, shade, and beauty. Next time you're outside, look at the grass under your feet and the trees above your head. Remember that God created all of this in just one day, making our world the perfect home for everything that was yet to come. God made the sun, moon, and stars on day 4 just to spice things up, that's right. Before this, the earth was just floating in darkness. Pretty wild, right? Picture this. God's up there like a cosmic artist with the biggest paint set ever. First, he puts the sun in charge of the day. It's like the world's biggest nightlight, except it works in reverse. Then he sprinkles stars across space like glitter on a giant black canvas. But wait, there's more. The moon gets the night shift supervisor position. It's basically the sun's chill cousin who makes sure we can still see a little bit at night. Now here's the cool part. God didn't just throw these lights up there randomly. He made them to help us tell time, like a giant space clock. Without day 4, we wouldn't know when to have birthday parties or when to go to bed. These lights in the sky are like God's way of playing connect the dots with the universe. And just think, this was all before he even made dolphins or puppies. Pretty impressive for just one day's work, if you ask me. Suddenly, the empty skies and quiet oceans came alive with movement. God spoke and swoosh, birds appeared everywhere, painting the sky with colors and songs. Imagine being there when the first penguin waddled, the first eagle soared, and the first dolphin jumped through waves. God didn't just make the one type of sea creature or bird, he made thousands. From the tiniest goldfish to the biggest whale, from the smallest hummingbird to the tallest ostrich, each one was perfectly designed. He gave pelicans their funny pouches, gave flamingos their pink feathers, and taught fish how to swim in groups. Think about it. Every time you hear birds singing in the morning or see fish swimming at the beach, you're watching God's fifth-day masterpiece, still living and moving exactly as he planned. And the coolest part, he looked at all these amazing animals and said they were good, just the way he made them. The greatest masterpiece of all time happened on day 6 of creation. Picture this. The world is almost finished, but something huge is missing. First, God filled the land with every kind of amazing animal you can think of. Lions, tigers, elephants, bunnies, and even tiny ants, all appearing at once. But God wasn't done yet. He had saved his most special creation for last. That's when he made the first humans, Adam and Eve. Unlike the animals, humans were created in God's own image. That means we can think, create, and love just like God does. God gave Adam and Eve a super important job: to take care of all the animals and the beautiful garden he had made. It was like being put in charge of the biggest, coolest zoo ever. They could name the animals anything they wanted. When God looked at everything he had made on day 6, especially humans, he didn't just say it was good like the other days. He said it was very good. That means you're part of God's most amazing creation. Every person is his masterpiece, carefully designed to be unique and special. Next time you see different animals or meet new people, remember, we're all part of God's incredible Day 6 plan. Nothing actually happened on the 7th day of creation, and that's exactly what made it special. After making the entire universe in 6 days, putting stars in the sky, filling the oceans with fish, and creating humans, God did something radical. He stopped. On day 7, God took a break. He rested. Not because he was tired, but to show us something super important. Think about it. The same God who spoke light into existence and hung planets in space like Christmas ornaments decided that taking a pause was just as important as all the creating. It's like when you spend all day building the most amazing Lego castle ever, and then you sit back to enjoy looking at it. That moment of enjoying what you made is just as special as building it. That's why God made the 7th day holy. It's a gift to us, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is absolutely nothing. So next time someone tells you to take a break, remember, even the creator of everything thought resting was cool enough to make it part of his perfect week.
A long time ago, in a great kingdom called Babylon, there lived a man named Daniel. Daniel wasn't from Babylon. He had been taken from his home when he was just a boy, but he grew up to become one of the wisest and most trusted men in the land. He was strong in his faith, kind in his heart, and full of wisdom. But more than anything, Daniel loved God. Every single day, no matter what was happening, Daniel would stop 3 times to pray. He would go to his window, open it toward Jerusalem, get on his knees, and talk to God. He prayed in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, without fail. Now Daniel served under a new king, King Darius. The king liked Daniel a lot. In fact, he liked him so much that he planned to make Daniel the ruler over the entire kingdom, second only to the king himself. This made the other royal officials and governors very angry and jealous. They didn't like Daniel, and they definitely didn't want him to be in charge. But there was a problem. Daniel was honest. He never stole, never lied, never cheated. They tried to catch him doing something wrong, but they couldn't. He always did what was right, not just in the king's eyes, but in God's eyes too. So the jealous officials came up with a sneaky plan. They said, "We'll never catch Daniel doing something wrong unless it has to do with his God." They went to King Darius and said, "Oh, great king, live forever. We think you should make a new law. For the next 30 days, no one can pray to any god or person except you, your majesty. If anyone disobeys, they should be thrown into a den full of lions." King Darius, not realizing it was a trick, liked the idea. He thought it would bring unity to the kingdom, so he signed the law. And in those days, once a law was signed by the king, it could not be undone, not even by the king himself. Daniel heard about the law. He knew exactly what it said, but did that stop him from praying? No way. Just like always, Daniel went home, opened his windows toward Jerusalem, knelt down, and prayed to God 3 times a day. The jealous men were watching. They burst into Daniel's home, caught him praying, and ran to tell the king. "Daniel has broken your law," they shouted. He prayed to his God. King Darius was heartbroken. He realized too late that he had been tricked. He didn't want to punish Daniel. He liked Daniel. He respected Daniel. All day long, the king tried to think of a way to save him, but there was nothing he could do. At sunset, the men came back and said, "The law cannot be changed." So, with a heavy heart, King Darius gave the order. Daniel was taken to the lion's den. Before they rolled the stone across the entrance, the king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you." Then the stone was sealed, guards were posted, and Daniel was left alone with the lions. That night, King Darius couldn't sleep. He didn't eat. He didn't listen to music. He just tossed and turned, worrying about his friend. As soon as the morning light came, the king jumped out of bed and hurried to the lion's den. He called out with a shaky voice, "Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God able to rescue you from the lions?" And then he heard a voice. "Long live the king," Daniel said. "My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths. They haven't hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, and I have done no wrong before you, O king." The king was overjoyed. He immediately ordered the stone to be rolled away. Daniel was lifted out, and not a single scratch was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. Then the king gave a new command. The wicked men who had plotted against Daniel were thrown into the lion's den, and this time there was no miracle to protect them. Afterward, King Darius wrote a letter to everyone in his kingdom. It said, "I decree that everyone must respect the God of Daniel, for he is the living God. He endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed. He rescues and saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." And from that day on, Daniel continued to prosper. He stayed faithful to God his whole life, and God stayed faithful to him.
The town of Jericho was buzzing with excitement. "Jesus is coming! Jesus is coming!" the people shouted. Crowds poured into the streets, hoping to catch a glimpse of the man they had heard so much about. The man who healed the sick, told amazing stories, and loved everyone, even people others ignored. Among the crowd was a man named Zacchaeus. Now Zacchaeus wasn't very popular. In fact, most people didn't like him at all. Why? Because Zacchaeus was a tax collector. He collected money from people for the Roman government, but he also took extra money and kept it for himself. He was rich but not honest. He had lots of money but not many friends. Still, Zacchaeus had heard about Jesus, and something in his heart told him, I need to see him. I need to know who he is. So Zacchaeus hurried to the road where Jesus was passing by. But there was one problem. Zacchaeus was short. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see over the crowd. He tiptoed, he jumped, he weaved between people, but it was no use. Everyone was taller than him, and no one was going to let the town's most disliked man cut to the front. But Zacchaeus had an idea. He ran ahead of the crowd to where he knew Jesus would pass by, and he spotted a sycamore tree. Without thinking twice, he scrambled up the trunk, grabbed the branches and climbed higher and higher until he could see everything. From up in the tree, Zacchaeus could finally see the road, and then he saw Jesus walking toward him. As Jesus got closer, the crowd grew quiet. Everyone leaned forward, wondering what he would say or do next. Then Jesus stopped right under the tree. He looked up right into Zacchaeus' eyes and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." Zacchaeus nearly fell out of the tree in shock. Jesus knew his name. Jesus was talking to him. And Jesus wanted to come to his house? Zacchaeus scrambled down the tree as fast as he could. His heart was pounding. He was so excited that he forgot how unpopular he was. He stood before Jesus smiling from ear to ear. But the crowd? They weren't smiling. "Why is Jesus talking to him?" someone muttered. "He's a sinner," another person whispered. "He's cheated us for years. Jesus shouldn't go to his house." But Jesus wasn't worried about what the crowd thought. He came for people just like Zacchaeus, people who were lost, hurting, and ready for a change. Zacchaeus turned to Jesus with tears in his eyes and said, "Lord, I will give half of everything I own to the poor, and if I've cheated anyone, I'll pay them back 4 times as much." That day, something changed in Zacchaeus' heart. He didn't just want to see Jesus anymore. He wanted to follow him, and he showed it not just with his words, but with his actions. Jesus smiled and said, "Today, salvation has come to this house, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost." What this story teaches us: Jesus knows your name, even when others overlook you. No one is too far gone to be loved or forgiven. When we truly meet Jesus, we want to change, not because we have to, but because our hearts are full of his love. Faith isn't just about saying the right words, it's about living them out with love, kindness, and generosity. Zacchaeus climbed a tree to see Jesus, but what really mattered was that Jesus saw him and called him down into a new life filled with joy, friendship, and forgiveness.
Elijah and the widow's miracle. The land was dry. The grass had turned brown. The rivers had shrunk to puddles. There was no rain, not for days, not for weeks, not even for months. God had told his prophet Elijah that a drought would come, and it did. For a long time, no rain fell on the land of Israel. That meant the crops didn't grow. The animals were hungry, people were thirsty, and food became very, very hard to find. But God took care of Elijah. At first, God told Elijah to hide near a little brook. Elijah drank fresh water from the brook, and ravens, yes, birds, brought him bread and meat every morning and every evening. It was a miracle. But after a while, even the brook dried up. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. "Go to a town called Zarephath," God said. "I have commanded a widow there to supply you with food." So Elijah obeyed. He walked and walked until he reached the gates of Zarephath. As he approached the town, he saw a woman gathering sticks. She looked tired. Her clothes were worn. She had a sad look in her eyes. Elijah called out to her, "Excuse me, could you bring me a little water in a jar so I can have a drink?" The woman paused, looked at him, and nodded. She turned to go get the water. Then Elijah added, "And while you're at it, could you bring me a piece of bread?" The woman stopped. She turned around slowly and looked at him with sorrow. "I don't have any bread," she said quietly. "Only a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I was gathering these sticks to make a small fire. I'm going to make the last bit of bread for me and my son, and then we will have nothing left." Elijah saw her pain, but he also knew God had a plan. "Don't be afraid," Elijah said gently. "Go home and do as you said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me and bring it to me. Then make something for you and your son." The woman looked confused. "But I barely have anything." Then Elijah gave her God's promise. "This is what the Lord says. The jar of flour will not run out, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." The woman had a choice to make. She could say no and keep the little she had, or she could trust Elijah's God and share her last bit of food. She looked at her son, then back at Elijah, and she decided to believe. She hurried home, mixed the little flour and oil, and made a small loaf of bread for Elijah, just like he asked. Then she made bread for herself and her son. And guess what? There was still flour in the jar. There was still oil in the jug. The next day, she baked again, and there was still enough. And the next day, and the next. Every single day, God provided for Elijah, the widow, and her son. The jar never ran out. The jug never dried up. God kept his promise. What this story teaches us: 1. God sees us, even when we're struggling. 2. Sharing what we have, especially when it's hard, can lead to blessings. 3. Trusting God opens the door for miracles. 4. When we obey, even in small things, God takes care of us. The widow thought she was preparing her last meal, but when she put her faith in God's word, she discovered something amazing. God always provides. It was one of those days when everything felt busy. Jesus and his disciples had just come back from a long trip. Jesus had been healing the sick, helping people, and teaching large crowds. He was tired. The disciples were tired. They hadn't even had time to eat. So Jesus said, "Let's go to a quiet place to rest." They climbed into a boat and sailed across the Sea of Galilee, hoping to find a peaceful hillside where they could relax, pray, and maybe eat a small meal together. But when the boat reached the other side, they saw something surprising. A giant crowd was already waiting. More than 5,000 people, men, women, and children, had followed Jesus. Some had walked for miles just to see him. Many brought sick family members, hoping for healing. Others had heard about Jesus' miracles and wanted to know more. Everyone was hungry, not just for food, but for hope. Now, if you or I saw a huge crowd when we were trying to rest, we might want to run the other way. But not Jesus. When he looked at the people, his heart was filled with compassion. He saw how much they needed comfort and truth. He saw their tired faces, their hurting hearts, their broken bodies. And even though he was weary, Jesus began to teach them about God's love, and he healed the sick, one by one. Time passed quickly. The sun rose high, then started to fall again. The disciples were getting nervous. "Jesus," they said, "it's getting late, and this is a remote place. There are no stores or villages nearby. You should send the people away so they can buy food." But Jesus shook his head. "They don't need to leave," he said calmly. "You give them something to eat." The disciples stared at him. "Us? Feed them? There are thousands of people. That would cost a fortune, and we didn't bring any food." Then Andrew, one of the disciples, stepped forward with a little boy by his side. "This boy has a small lunch," Andrew said. 5 barley loaves and 2 small fish. But that's nothing compared to what we need." The boy looked up at Jesus, his eyes wide, but he wasn't afraid. He held out his lunch with open hands. It wasn't much, just a small meal packed by his mother, but he was willing to share it. Jesus smiled warmly. "This is enough." He told the disciples to have everyone sit down on the grassy hillside. The people formed little groups, sitting together like families at a picnic. The children laughed and rolled in the grass. The parents waited quietly, wondering what Jesus was about to do. Jesus took the loaves and fish into his hands. He looked up to heaven, closed his eyes, and gave thanks to God. Then he broke the bread and handed it to the disciples. "Go, pass this out," he said. They obeyed. As they handed out the bread, something amazing happened. It never ran out. Each time they reached into the basket, there was more. Then came the fish, fresh, delicious, and somehow endless. The disciples walked back and forth across the hillside, handing food to one person after another. Everyone ate, everyone was full. The children were amazed. "I've never had this much bread before," one giggled. A mother whispered, "This tastes better than anything we've ever bought." A little girl clapped and said, "Jesus is amazing." When everyone had eaten until their bellies were full, Jesus said, "Gather the leftovers. Don't waste anything." So the disciples walked among the people again, this time collecting what was left. They filled 12 baskets full of leftover food, all from 5 loaves and 2 fish. The people were amazed. "Surely this is the prophet we've been waiting for," someone whispered. "He must be sent by God." Some of them wanted to make Jesus their king right then and there. But Jesus quietly slipped away to a nearby mountain to pray. He didn't come to be a king like the world expected. He came to feed the hungry, not just with bread, but with the truth of who God is.
My name is Eli, and I'm just a kid. Some people think kids don't matter much in big crowds. But one day, something small I did turned into something big, really big. It all started on a bright morning when I heard that Jesus was coming near our village. Everyone had been talking about him, how he healed the sick, taught amazing things about God, and told stories that made people smile and think. I'd never seen him myself, but I knew I had to go. "Can I go see Jesus?" I asked my mother, "please?" She smiled and handed me a small cloth bundle. "Here," she said, "I packed you a little lunch, 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fish. Be safe and stay near the front so you can see." I nodded and ran off, clutching my bundle tightly. I didn't know that today would change my life. When I got to the hillside, there were already thousands of people sitting and standing, waiting for Jesus. I found a spot where I could see everything. Jesus was teaching people, healing the sick, and showing kindness to everyone, even the ones no one else talked to. I listened for hours, and even though the sun was hot, I didn't want to miss a word. Then I started to notice something. People were getting hungry. Mothers were rocking crying babies. Kids were asking their parents for food. Even some grown-ups were looking around for snacks. Then I saw some of Jesus' helpers, his disciples, walking around. They were whispering to each other, looking a little worried. I inched closer and overheard one of them say, "There's no food and it's getting late. Should we send everyone home?" Another one said, "Even if we had months of pay, we couldn't buy enough bread for this crowd." That's when Andrew, one of Jesus' disciples, spotted me. He saw my little lunch bundle and asked kindly, "Hey, what do you have there?" I held it out. Just 5 small barley loaves and 2 fish. My mom packed it. He looked at it, then at me, and then smiled. "Would you be willing to share it with Jesus?" I didn't even have to think. "Yes," I said. "It's not much, but maybe he can use it." Andrew led me to Jesus. I looked up at him. His eyes were kind, full of love, like he really saw me. I placed my lunch in his hands. Jesus smiled at me and said, "Thank you." Then he told everyone to sit down. Thousands of people sat on the grass, waiting, wondering what would happen next. Jesus held up my lunch and looked toward the sky. He gave thanks to God for my little lunch. Then he began to break the bread, and he didn't stop. Piece after piece, basket after basket, he handed it to the disciples to give to the people. And somehow, miraculously, The bread never ran out. The same thing happened with the fish. I watched in amazement as my tiny lunch fed over 5,000 people. I saw children like me eating until they were full. I saw grown men smiling as they shared. I saw mothers finally able to quiet their hungry babies. Everyone had more than enough. And then, when it was over, Jesus told the disciples, "Gather the leftovers so nothing is wasted." They filled 12 baskets, 12 full of leftover bread and fish from my lunch. People were amazed. "This must be the prophet," someone whispered. "God is surely with him." I just stood there, still holding the empty cloth my mother gave me, and smiled. I didn't do anything big. I didn't preach. I didn't lead a crowd. I just shared what I had, and Jesus made it into a miracle. What this story teaches us: 1, you're never too young or too small to make a difference. 2, when we give Jesus what we have, he can use it in extraordinary ways. 3, even a simple lunch can become a miracle when it's given with a willing heart. 4, Jesus sees us, values us, and invites us to be part of his amazing work. So don't ever think your gift is too small. Put it in Jesus' hands and watch what he does.